Well, what really happened? Joining me now is Republican Congressman Kinzinger of Illinois. Congressman, thanks for being with us. I mean, earlier today, you have Sean Spicer calling this a bad deal that the president walked away from. Last week, saying that the president left everything on the field. Did you ever hear anyone in the White House or President Trump himself say this was a bad deal?
Well, I didn't hear them say that, but look, I'll tell you where it was going. So I have to actually agree with Sean Spicer. The president worked his tail off for this. I went to the Oval Office. He spent an hour with 10 of us just asking, what are your concerns to those that had concerns. And but ultimately, here's the problem in our caucus. You have 30 people. They're called the House Freedom Caucus that can never, ever, ever get to yes. And so what they did is they went to the president and said, hey, we want you to repeal essential health benefits. He said, well, okay, states can make them. We'll do that to get your votes. And then the House Freedom Caucus said, oh, wait, now we want you to rescind all of Title I, which is kids on your parents' plan until 26, and pre-existing conditions. And the president said, look, I campaigned that we were going to keep that. All Republicans did. There's no way I'm pulling that. So, yeah, that would be a bad deal. But even if he'd have given on that, which he wasn't about to, the House Freedom Caucus would have come up with something else. They're simply
They were moving the
unwilling to
goalposts,
govern.
you're saying?
They kept and they've done this for years. They've done it for years.
So what happens now? I mean, is this thing dead for this year? Is it something, obviously tax reform is something, and infrastructure is something the president has talked a lot about. What about health care?
It's hard to tell. Obviously, I think mentally we need to move on to infrastructure, to tax reform. Is there an opportunity for health care? Maybe. It's going to be up to the House Freedom Caucus if they ever want to come to yes. I think when it comes to Obamacare, we have to understand that in the health care system, people's lives are actually affected. And while I thought that this was a better option, if we can never get to yes on this, we're going to have to start looking to moderate Democrats to say, what do we do to fix the system? I'd still love to get to repeal and replace, but look, when you have 7% of the House caucus, of the Freedom Caucus, of everybody in the House saying, we'll never, ever, ever get to yes, you either have to have Democrats or you do nothing. That's just the math of it.
So you would possibly be open to not only working with Democrats, but essentially keeping Obamacare, but just trying to fix it, just trying to improve things that don't work with it?
Look, I would rather. We made campaign promises, but if you can't get the numbers out of the Republicans, so this is on the House Freedom Caucus, are you ever willing to get to yes? Are you ever willing to get to yes? If you can get to yes, we can fix this. But if not, we have to understand as Republicans and frankly as Americans that people's lives are being affected. So what do we have to do to make it better? Are we right there yet where we say fix Obamacare? No. I think if there's still an opportunity, let's do it. But if you're a House Freedom Caucus member, you have to learn that governing is far different than being in opposition. And they think they're in opposition still. I mean,
shouldn't Republicans, though, have had more of a plan in place? I mean, shouldn't all of this been worked out? And as you said, everybody was running on this, not just, in one election, but in multiple elections over the course of 7 years.
Yeah, look, that's been a criticism, and people have been repeating that. The reality, and maybe we didn't do a good enough job of showing it, a lot of these ideas came from, frankly, what we've been talking about for a long time, whether it was in the Better Way agenda, and then we developed this through committee. I was on the Energy and Commerce Committee where this was developed. People had an opportunity to amend it. We stayed up for 28 straight hours amending this. It was a pretty miserable night. And then the bill exists, and there's a process to go through. You have members of the House Freedom Caucus that say, we weren't at the table. Well, there are two members of the House Freedom Caucus on the Energy and Commerce Committee, and a caucus doesn't write bills. It's written in committee. So we went through we could have done a better job of messaging, I'm sure, but the reality is you have people that take false information, the House Freedom Caucus, and they say that they never consulted us, or this isn't a straight repeal, it's Obamacare light, and you convince people of completely untruths.
On another subject, I just want to ask you about your colleague, Congressman Nunes, chair of the House Intel Committee. Obviously, he acknowledges he was on the White House grounds last Tuesday reviewing classified intelligence from a source he won't name. The following day, he announces publicly that legal surveillance of foreign nationals might have also captured communication from then President-elect Trump and his advisors. Nothing to do with Russia, he says. The president said he felt somewhat vindicated by the chairman's revelation. Does it make sense to you that the chairman would have, rushed over to White House grounds to get this information, and then the next day go back to the White House to brief the president? Because Sean Spicer today said this information was widely available within the executive branch.
Yeah, see, I'm not sure. So now the going back and briefing the president, depending on what that information was, that would make sense, especially if it's talking about unmasking or people that have been captured in surveillance or whatever. In terms of going to the executive mansion or to the White House grounds, we have to keep in mind that's a whole branch of government. There's different agencies that are housed there. And I'm not on the Intel Committee, but I've talked to members that say, look, We can't get all the information always in the Capitol complex. Sometimes we have to go to other areas to get it. So I'll leave those answers to Chairman Nunes. What I will say is I know him to be a very honorable man, and I really think he wants to get to the bottom of everything that's going on.
You don't think he's just trying to provide cover to the president? Because clearly that's what a lot of Democrats on the committee think.
I don't think so, but I think, look, I think obviously he's out there. He needs to explain a lot of this. And frankly, we need a bipartisan answer. There's still an investigation going on in the Senate as well to what happened in terms of all the Russia questions. I sure hope we get there.
Congressman, I appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Anytime.